Go ahead. Yosef, it's on you. Take it away. The recorder is on.
All right. Well, good evening, Real Truth family. It was a real tough day for a lot of people because of the shootings in Virginia. Alexandria, Virginia, by the way, is a city named after Alexandria in Egypt, which is a tribute, just like Memphis is, Atlanta. Those are all former Egyptian cities or current Egyptian cities. So a lot of people want to know what that is, I'm sure, here tonight, as it relates to the Republic, as it relates to Trump, as it relates to Paul Ryan, and certainly as it relates to the GCR and the RV. I've had a chance to really dig into it, ask some questions to some really smart people that would probably have answers to our questions. And I just wanted to share with everybody, and I know there were people shot. I know there were 5 people shot in total, including the shooter, and only the shooter was killed. And everybody else, I think, should be okay. There was a congressional aide that got shot in the chest, but it missed his heart, so he should be able to make it. So I don't want to downplay the violence, but I do, again, want to focus on the blessing instead of obsess over the burden. And from the top-down point of view, the blessing of this is the cabal is down to a 66-year-old throwaway white male that they were able to radicalize out of the Sanders campaign and basically convince him that he could wipe out.
All participants are muted.
Okay. So, sister, can you still hear me?
Yes, I bridged the other line over. I apologize.
Okay, no worries.
Okay.
So the cabal is down to basically throw away disposable old white men that they find, and they can radicalize and convince them to change the world with the trigger of a gun. And they convinced this gentleman that he was going to save the world by taking out 22 congressmen and senators, Republican, in a turkey shoot. And he showed up this morning and started at the third base line and worked everybody over to one entrance, one gate, and was going to pick them off one by one when they came out. The only problem was I don't think they told him that there's going to be return fire or security detail with Steve Scalise, who is the third in charge of the House behind Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy. He's the majority whip in the House, and anyway, he wasn't able to accomplish really much of anything after having nearly 2 minutes with an automatic weapon in open target. It was pretty pathetic, actually, in assassination terms. At least that's what I was told. And unfortunately, he was rebuffed quickly within a minute and 40 seconds, and really accomplished nothing structurally, absolutely nothing. So it really begs the question, is that all they got left? And the answer, we believe, is yes. So from intelligence circles, there's a lot of upbeat people tonight because they pump faked one more time. Last night at midnight, 12:01, the entire Democratic Congressional Caucus, 196 members strong, submitted an impeachment-like lawsuit against Trump for the emoluments clause, which is basically illegally receiving monies from foreign governments to benefit yourself in the presidency. which there was a lawsuit on Monday filed in Maryland and the District of Columbia in the same sense. This one was a little bit more federal and basically was a constitutional claim versus loss of wages to other businesses. And really, it signified that the Democratic Party was unified in impeaching Trump. Now, this was extremely significant because there are 435 members of Congress that go on the record and vote every time there's an issue. And there's 196 Democrats, which makes 236, is that right? Wait, 239 Republicans. And of those 239, to impeach the president, you would only need 92 to get to a two-thirds majority. So the thinking is that there would be 92 Republicans that would be willing to impeach Mr. Trump, along with 196 Democrats, and that would start a chain reaction that would lead to his ultimate impeachment, which is why he was talking about firing special prosecutor and former FBI director John Mueller, this past weekend. Now, what's interesting, what's even more interesting about that kind of ball rolling down the hill, rolling down the top of the mountain, starting at 12:01 this morning, was I'm told they actually sent the press releases to New York Times, Washington Post, The Hill, Politico, and ultimately never announced it. And the papers never ran it. They did something on their blogs, but nothing that warranted the kind of attention that something like impeaching a president would warrant. And this was planned. This was a pump fake to draw out the final attack of the cabal. We talk about pump fakes all the time, right? Well, this was that. Angry white man that was willing to take out 22 congressmen. Now, that seems like kind of not an appropriate response to stop the impeachment of a president. However, when you understand that if he had even gotten to say a dozen, even a half dozen congressmen, that would have been a national tragedy. If you recall with Giffords, Gabby Giffords, when she was shot, actually technically she was a false flag, but the illusion that she was shot created a real tragedy around the country and a real sadness. Well, if you were to shoot 6 with, majority leadership in there, thrown in there, that would have been a real tragedy, and that might have stopped the RV, which the cabal thought was going last night. So the impeachment lawsuit gets filed. Press releases are released to the press. The cabal then fires up this 66-year-old radicalized guy from Illinois who's been stalking the area for 5 weeks, doing reconnaissance every morning from 5 to 7 a.m. at the across the street YMCA. So he was ready, knew what he was doing, knew where to go, and got the call this morning to go for it. But the RV never came. And so what we got was a failed attempt at taking out, 22 congressmen or 20 congressmen and two senators, 2 Republican senators. Now, in doing a little bit of research, I found out that they don't need to take out 92 Republican senators to stop impeachment. All they really need to do is take out the House Judiciary Committee, which is 24 members, because the House Judiciary Committee is the committee, the appropriate committee that votes on whether or not to bring impeachment proceedings to the floor of the House of Representatives. Now, of those 24 House Judiciary members, actually technically you only need a majority, but let's just say there's 24, that they had their eye on to stop this. None of them are in the House leadership, and a few of them were actually on the field yesterday or today, but none of them have security detail. Like literally, they walk around like you or me as congressmen with no security detail. So in theory, they can all be gotten to. And the message that was sent today by the cabal, or at least their message that they wanted to send was, we will take out whoever we need to take out in full public view to stop the impeachment of Donald Trump. Because the impeachment of Donald Trump is directly linked into the release of the RV. And so the game of cat and mouse of when they're going to do it, when they're going to release it, the cabal holding back their master plans of trying to stop it with whatever artillery they have left, is really kind of what we're all experiencing right now, and why it's so confusing, and why there have been so many pump fakes. It's basically to draw the runners, to draw the plans, or the kind of the running, working plans, the active plans that are latent, waiting to be activated when the cabal thinks it's going. And the reason this is done is not to piss people off. I know there's a lot of really upset and disgruntled people, not only on the internet, but just in general, watching this, not having a clue what the hell's going on, but knowing there's something not right about this. Really not right. Trump and shooting congressmen, and this is really bad. There's a real problem with shadow governments and deep states and all this kind of stuff that they're bringing up, firing special prosecutors and FBI directors. I mean, this is bad, really bad. And so where do you go for information? Where do you go for news? They didn't even talk about the impeachment proceedings on the news today. Nobody even spoke to it. Nobody spoke to it. Nobody. As if it didn't even happen. And they really did file it this morning at 12:01. So it was a complete fake out on the part of the Republic to sucker in the cabal to reveal their plan, because they really want to start the RV, and once they start it, they are determined not to stop it. So your safety, both in your physical form and in your money post-RV, and in your government structurally long-term, as well as in your world government long-term, is all of critical importance to be set on a very solid and safe foundation, so that you can enjoy the blessings short, medium, long, and super long for generations. Now, if you're struggling, you have no money, your wife won't talk to you, your kids won't talk to you, or your landlord's knocking on your door, or there's nothing in the refrigerator to eat or cupboards, that doesn't make anything better. I get it. It's nice to know. It's good information. Maybe it's right, maybe it's not, but you need something now. Well, this isn't a now kind of a thing, or it hasn't been, even though we're on an hour-by-hour watch at this point. It's going to come when it's the safest, smartest, most strategic time and place to come. And we can speculate, and we can get intel, and we can make estimations, and we can look at astrological clocks and lunar clocks and solar clocks and Chinese calendars and Julian calendars, and we can do numerology. We can try and figure everything out. But at the end of the day, it's really about safety, and they're not going to go until it's completely safe. Now, that said, I want to throw this at you, Real Truth Nation. The first time they tried to do a global financial reset into the digital age was 9/11/2001. And it didn't go very well, sadly. But it was proposed to me that they said, Yosef, what would be the best time to go if they were going to go on 9/11? And I said, well, I thought it was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the morning with the keys, turning over at 8. And they said, well, you got the attack at 8 o'clock, so that didn't work out. He said, but if you were still going to go that day, what would be the best time to go. And I said, well, probably during the height of the coverage because everybody would be distracted. So, that being said, there's a lot of coverage going on with this false flag, this real attempt, at lives. And you have impeachment proceedings now, not just pending, but filed against the president in local and federal court. And they said, just keep your head up, because you never know when it's going to drop in. And it may drop in at the worst possible moment. And I just thought that was interesting, that they are actually factoring in the cabal's attacks and using it against them to create a distraction, because on 9/11, nobody would have been thinking about banking. Nobody would have looked at what the banks are doing or if there was an RV or anything like that. They would have taken the negative and spun it into a positive. And if congressmen were shot today, if there was a real problem, if there was a real tragedy, they might have still released it. So I don't know exactly what that means in terms of timing. I just thought it was an interesting thing to think about because they made me think about it in different terms. So I'm sharing that with you. In terms of the banks, the banks are a little frustrated because they have been on go since Saturday night or Friday night. And when I say on go, I mean pins and needle on go. Fully staffed. There are exchange centers nobody knows about. Everything's been militarized, so you are beyond safe, when you go in and do your redemption. More so than anybody really understands or knows about. There are multiple strategies for continuation or duplicating the exchange procedures in case there's a problem, or if there's an individual attack on an individual center in an area. They have strategies basically to overcome any obstacle. I haven't been privileged to all of them, only discussed in really broad general terms. So once the RV starts, it's not going to stop. The only way they can stop an attack in their eyes, in my opinion, is by pump faking the enemy to death to try and draw it out before they start. Is that annoying to us? You betcha. Is that in some ways good because it lowers the anxiety of the community because most people drop off after they hear it so many times they just stop believing it? You betcha. But it serves the same purpose. It lowers the heightened anxiety of both the the currency community as well as the bad guys trying to do us harm with their little secret plan. So the longer we wait, the safer it is. Again, if you're starving, if you're hungry, if you need to pay the bills, if your family won't talk to you because you're not earning, that doesn't help. But I'm just telling you how they're thinking, and that time is their friend, not their enemy. And they can wait as long as they need to in order to ensure our safety. Now, I've said that before, but it seems like they continuously pump fake. They pump fake me on the 10th like crazy, and there were some things that happened over the weekend in a negative way they haven't really shared with the community yet, and I'm not going to share everything because it's pretty scary. But there are a lot of plans cabal has to attempt to stop this, including the impeachment of Trump. Because if Trump goes away and the Republic comes into full view, then Israel basically loses their leverage against the U.S. Congress and the U.S. government, and thus the U.S. military and the U.S. Treasury. And if that happens, well, then the cabal loses their spiritual home in Israel, their vibrational spiritual home, and that means that the families that once ruled the world no longer rule it. Not financially, not militarily, not politically, not diplomatically. Nowhere do they rule anything. So you can see why they've they're throwing everything in the kitchen sink against the plans of the rest of the world. And because of that, the good guys are going very slowly, methodically, and faking out start times, using the banks, using the intelligence community, the pseudo-intelligence community, using the media, using press releases, using lawsuits, using everything within their toolbox to draw the enemy's position and their plans out early. And that ultimately creates our safety. So we can talk about what's going on in Mosul or what the Zim rate is or what private placement programs are and trading, and we can talk about all that till you're blue in the face, and I'm happy to answer those questions. But I want you to understand the overarching concern here is safety. It's not the rate of the Zim or whether you're going to be able to hold on to your accounts long term. Those questions have all been answered and solved and implemented. The issue now is just physical safety. It's having certainty over the deliverance of the gift, and also the restoration of our government on its correct footing. And from that, I'll just end it. But I want everybody to know that what happened today in Virginia was a sign of utter desperation, without any really intelligent planning and execution in a very simple turkey shoot kind of scenario, because there was nowhere to go in the baseball field. There were two exits, and he was covering one. So the only place to go, he had him in a dead turkey shoot, and he missed them all. So we are really in a good spot, because if they can't execute that, then they can't execute anything larger than that. And it just goes to show how weakened the cabal not only is, but how obliterated they are in terms of central planning, in terms of raw asset, in terms of intelligence. They just physically don't have the mind space or the intellectual capacity to formulate reversing ideas and strategies and coup attempts to change the narrative, which ultimately raises the vibration of the species and population and awareness, and that reveals them. One last little kind of side note about the shooting today was it had multiple effects, or was supposed to, and one of them not only was to scare people, but another was to validate the Sandy Hook false flag that is going to come up on TV with Megyn Kelly and Alex Jones. Now, Alex Jones is a cabal agent, or has been. He was a comedian named Bill Hicks. And Bill Hicks is a terrific comic, but the CIA spun him into becoming Alex Jones and ultimately leading kind of the world astray and only giving them half-truths about conspiracies. Well, I think part of his amnesty package is he has to give the half-truths he gave and give them in full view, and one of them is Sandy Hook, and of course we know that to be a false flag and nobody died. But what they were trying to do today was actually have a mass murder that was a real killing. That was a real live killing. In fact, on TV, as you were watching it come in, what was unusual about it wasn't so much that lone white gunman was trying to shoot people down. It was the interviews that were following up, and the coverage was actually real coverage. It was real again, like the interviews, the emotion. Nothing was really scripted. Everybody was upset or nervous or sweating, or they weren't polished. They didn't have a lines down, And we're so used to seeing false flag events on television where all the witnesses are perfectly coiffed, they're perfectly rehearsed, they say exactly their line in perfect rhythm, and off they go. And it's as though we're to believe that. Well, now, hopefully, that there are no more false flags that are going to come out, or at least fewer, and ultimately you'll be able to tell when something's truly real and not. Now, assuming that the media has been controlled as we understand them to be. So it's really kind of was just from that standpoint alone, I was watching a real news event covered with real journalism without all the fake and phony and faux, interviews surrounding it. I thought that was dramatic from my point of view. And really told me just how far along we are. Plus, it didn't work, which told me how weakened the dark forces were, and really how irrelevant the dark forces are. And for that, that's a great place to rejoice and feel gratitude. And certainly the Zim being over $10, as Edward holds the Zim and, believes and is happy about that. I mean, that's, the longer we wait, the more we make. So all that being equal, I'll open it up to questions, but I want to really come from a place of appreciation and a place of gratitude tonight, and certainty and confidence and peace about the fact that we figured it out. We opened our eyes, we kept our eyes open, we forced our eyes open, we forced our hearts open, we kept asking for the truth, we kept praying on it, and the Lord just kept delivering us and delivering us and delivering us. And so to feel bad or sad or negative or start taking shots at other people in the community that are trying to do the right thing is counterproductive. It's really important we keep not only our eyes on the prize, but as the Covey book said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing for us is the healing of souls. And by redeeming our currency, we will have resources by which to not only heal our own soul, but to heal others. And as long as we stay focused on that and don't let the nonsense kind of enter into that, and we keep our thoughts pure and we keep our focus, on godly things, we will be shown the truth and escorted into our exchange appointment with ease and great abundance. And all we have to do is stay faithful and loyal to God, which is a discipline, and it's a daily discipline. And with all the insanity here at the end, it's a moment-by-moment discipline. So I want to encourage everyone to stay, on the beam, keep the main thing the main thing. Don't get rattled. Don't fly off the handle because you see a bad post or you see a bad interview on television, or there's a false flag in Europe or a false flag in Virginia. Just know that you are in position. You have the assets. They are real. They are all tangible gold-backed assets that are infinitely valuable in ways that you will find out soon after the fact. And let's just go back to back and just keep our purity and keep our innocence protected, because they will try and take it away at every chance they get, be it media or violent attacks or lies about rates or lies about politicians or whatever it is. So that said, let's go to some calls, Dr. W.C.
Okay, I'm getting, Edward said he could hear you loud and clear, but I'm getting emails and texts that people can barely hear you. And I just talked to Show Me, and he said he can barely hear you too. So I don't know why our two phones can't hear you clear.
Well,
so is there any way you can push the volume up on your call, on your phone?
Sweetie, my volume is kicked up.
Okay, now that's a little louder.
Is there any way you can raise the volume on me on your control panel?
No, they took that. We don't have that option to lift up the volume on the panel, and my phone is on maximum, and my earpiece is on maximum.
All right, well, I tried to get some new earbuds today. They didn't particularly work out. I really don't like holding my phone to my head for hours on end because of the studies I've read on cancer and cellular phones. So,
okay.
How would you like to? How can we solve the problem?
Well, I'm having. Let me see. If neither one of us can hear you clear, it doesn't matter if he log in.
Yeah, people are texting me and saying they can hear me. So.
Okay. Well,
So they just heard what you
I
said.
guess
and
we
they're
just
not
have to
having
go
that.
with it.
Yeah, let's just go with it because I've done it like this before and there hasn't been too much of a problem. I would just think I'll try and speak up, and I encourage everybody to maybe, turn off the noise in the background or mute the dog.
Okay, well. First question says, hello, Yosef. Thank you for keeping us calm and grateful for our nearest future. Our question is, when the RV occurs, will currency dealers increase sales if others will like to purchase currency post-RV since they missed the initial revaluation?
Well, when a currency internationally revalues, that's what it is. And there's a period of time they have to give currency holders worldwide to redeem under international law. It's my understanding it'll be 2 years, but I've also heard it's as little as 6 months. So taking that range, people will have time. I think the bigger fear is people are worried about missing the sovereign rate that they're willing to offer the diehards like us that have been following it and living and dying for it for all these years, and they want to give us the option to redeem at higher rates because their feeling is that we have committed to something, we have sacrificed and suffered, and thus our commitment is more one of a spiritual nature and not just a financial one. And why not give them more money to disperse out to the world? It'll save them the time, money, and energy to find others who will do it. Plus, they don't really trust the banks or the elite power structures in place, and it's a good thing to give it out to new souls that want to live this type of lifestyle of infinite wealth and blessing and mercy, because unlike the elite and power structure that has been running things for so many centuries and millennia, we have a grassroots understanding of things. We understand what it's like to work 2 or 3 jobs, or to not have money and miss out on going to the right school or private school or groceries, or not being able to buy the nicer car, or not having enough money to get gas that night. I mean, we know what that feels like, and people that have grown up in terrific wealth don't. They don't even know they don't even know the price of milk, let alone they don't even drive themselves, for God's sake. So I think there's an element of they want people that have a desire to help people and are paying attention to have as much money as they can handle. And so don't worry about getting shut off on your currency. Just keep your mind and your heart attuned, and check in a few times a day, and when it pops up, you'll see it. Every website will have it. It'll show up real quick. You'll be able to make your appointments very quickly, and then take your time about setting your redemption appointment. So don't create panic over something that really is set up to bless more than take away from the many. Could you hear me, Dr. WC, on that one?
I can hear you, but you just really low. But we're going to go with it. Next question says, thank you all for this wonderful forum. Question for Yosef. You are saying the RV is not going to be released until Trump leaves office. Is this the public RV? Will the 800 numbers come before this? God bless you. Best regards.
Well, the thinking is you can't have a restored republic with a president that hasn't been decided on being the republic president. So we kind of need Trump not to be there. There was a thought that we needed him there because he was controllable, but it was explained to me that you really have to have him gone before you can go. And I'm not exactly sure what gone means. Maybe it's his public announcement of his resignation, starting of impeachment procedures. I'm not exactly sure on that. I know we're in some sort of window for the banks. I probably shouldn't even say that, but we're in a period where they have the ability to launch at any moment, and they are going to pump fake or test the waters until they feel they have the right temperature before they throw us into the pool and let us swim. So in terms of the Trump exodus and our entrance into the redemption centers, I do believe they are simultaneous. I just don't know what exit for Trump really means. And a lot of people I talked to felt it was when, the Republicans came out against Trump, and there was discussion on the Hill all weekend that the Democrats were going to lead and the Republicans were going to follow, and Trump was going to be ousted. We also found out today, on a side note, that Robert Mueller, is the special prosecutor, is investigating Trump now for obstruction of justice. So all that nonsense about Trump not being a subject of investigation of FBI James Comey, while potentially true at the time, is no longer true, and that Robert Mueller is in fact investigating President Trump for obstruction of justice. So he is a target of the investigation, and that is why the rumors of Trump firing Special Prosecutor Mueller were so vivid this weekend and early part of this week. What's interesting about that is what got Nixon impeached in 1974 when he fired Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox, and then he fired his Attorney General and his Deputy Attorney General because they wouldn't fire Archibald Cox, and I forget who he had to go to end up firing the special prosecutor, but he fired 3 people on a Saturday night, and I think they called it the Saturday Night Massacre or something like that, and that's ultimately what led the House to start impeachment proceedings, and before they could get to a vote on the floor, Nixon just resigned and took the plea deal. So little background for you, and also a little more of an update about what's going on in the courts and in the investigation.
Okay. My question is for anyone. Post-exchange, I know there is going to be a computer database with options for us to select humanitarian projects. Where can I send suggestions for designing this before it's made available to the public? Do you know what they're talking about?
Yeah, I do. So, people that get large amounts of money suddenly and don't really have the creativity or the workforce or the desire to get it out will be relying on groups that harvest projects, refine them, are willing to oversee them, and ultimately seek funding matches for people that have those types of interests. I think that's what she's talking about. And so the digital platform for humanitarian funding is very important. Number one, that the money can trust it, that they're actually going to real projects, and number two, that they're actually recruiting and refining the best projects in terms of technology and how many lives it affects and what parts of the world it reaches, and kids and women and seniors or the sick or the elderly or the animals or the environment. I mean, really, it's across the board. Anything can be put on a digital display, and you can point and click on where you want to put your money towards. So you wake up, you exchange your Zim, you're rich, but you really don't have the desire to go run a philanthropy globally every day. You wake up with your cup of coffee, and you point and click, and you fund 10 things in 10 different parts of the world for 10 different, really good philanthropic causes. And, before breakfast, you've blessed the whole world. And that could be somebody's day. And that would be a good way to use your money up and use the interest up as it comes in. So I think that's what she's meaning in terms of who designs that. The banks supposedly are going to have something like that. I would imagine, banks all have foundations and 501c3s that might do something like that. There's going to be independent groups that do something like that in kind of a crowdsourcing, kickstart type of philanthropy funding mechanism. Or you can start something like that on your own. You don't really need a bank or somebody else to do it if you have the chutzpah and the wherewithal to create your own platform and find your own project. In fact, I've told this to people. I don't think the issue moving forward will be finding money for philanthropic projects. I think the real competition will come in who has the best projects and who gets the best technologies and who gets the best operators, because we'll all be equivalent to some extent on the money side of things. And it's the ones that can accumulate the best project and oversee it and guarantee it that will ultimately do the most good.
Okay, so you can let this person know. Do I forward this email to you?
No, you don't have to forward it. I answered her question. So.
Oh, she wants to be able to help.
Well, she can help. I told you, the bank might be doing it. There'll be others that'll be doing it.
Okay. She could help.
Or she can create her own.
Privately.
Create her own. Right.
Okay. All right then. Well, how do I spend $250 quadrillion a year for the next 50 years on a humanitarian project?
Well, don't look at the zeros. Just look at the philosophy of it. The philosophy is the elders need you to get their money, their natural resources, out to people in the form of hydrated digital dollars. They need your help. And they're allowing you to buy these currencies online or gift them out or however you get them. And they're allowing you to convert them, and you can, dip into it as much as you can buy, but they know you can only buy so many houses, so many cars, so many fur coats, so many pair of Air Jordans, and ultimately you'll run out of that desire and need pretty quickly, and then it'll be about helping other people. And in other countries and other cities and other counties and all that type of stuff. So from their point of view is they'll give you whatever you sign up for, whatever you turn in. They'll honor it. But they also know that chances are you can't spend $250 quadrillion because you don't have the network, you don't have the desire, you don't have the creativity potentially. Those that do, great. They can spend it and give it away. It helps the world more. But those that don't, they at least give them the option to be able to rise or fall and give as much as they humanly can give. Everybody has a different threshold for giving, I guess. And by giving everyone an equal opportunity at unlimited resources, they literally create a sovereignty event for every human being, within the RV to be the biggest and best and boldest philanthropist they can be. And whether you spend $100 million or $100 quadrillion or $100 sextillion or 100 octillion or 100 nanotillion, it doesn't much matter to them, because if you don't spend it, you can trust it to the next person or the next generation, and they can basically take the same apple and take their own bite out of it, depending on how big their jaw and teeth are and how much apple they want. And then they can go and do the same thing that you started. And if there's nobody there to handle that in future generations, you can gift it to colleges, you can gift it to other charities that are already functional and operational. You could gift it to potentially governments or community pension funds or firefighters or nurse association or animal shelters. There's a lot of ways to spread your wealth around. But if for whatever reason it falls back to the bank or back to them, they'll just keep it. And so what they're doing is they're actually giving you an infinite credit to do good. And out of that, you can take as much as you need for yourself. But But what we're all getting is basically a golden ticket to serve the world. That's why I've done some posts on servitude, because that's really what we're getting involved in, is we're committing to a life of economic mercy, and with the rest of our lives post-RV. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. I think they think it's a party to have this much money or this much wealth or this much blessing. It's not. It's a tremendous burden to know that you can bless the world infinitely. It's a tremendous burden. Tremendous. And if you're not spiritually prepared for that, or up for that challenge, or desirous of that, it'll be hell for you. And you're better off taking a much lower number and saying, thanks so much. I'll take my 10 million, my 100 million, my 1 billion, my 10 billion, and I'll go this direction. You guys can go save the world and go the other direction. But if you want to take $250 quadrillion, let me tell you something. Morally, you're on the hook to help as many souls as you can reach.
Okay. Why are we continuously hearing the same rumors over and over, dancing in the street, partying in the street, exchanging here, exchanging there, but yet we're not seeing the manifestation of what we heard 4 or 5 times ago?
Right. So if you tell a 1-year-old their birthday's today, and it doesn't, and the party isn't there, they say, well, the balloons are there, the horses are there, the bounce house is all blown up, and they get there and there's no bounce house, there's no balloons, there's no horses, they stop believing, right? Well, if you tell them that 10 times, by the 10th time they don't even listen to you, right? They don't even believe it's their birthday anymore. And what that does is it creates annoyance on the part of the people that are participating, but it also creates safety. Because what the true power that B knows is, the second they finally do release it, good news will travel so fast and so quick, and it'll extend out so far that you will forget all the pain and suffering of all the pump fakes that they put you through, because at the end of the day, you're getting what you ultimately wanted. But you're getting it in a safer manner, because all of the excitement and energy and enthusiasm and predictability of the RV has been taken out of it. It's a military strategy. It's a basically surround the enemy and just choke them out. Well, in the process, civilians get choked out in that process too, right? And we're the civilians getting choked out. But once we're free, once we are released and we can go do our business, the suffering that we endured will actually, it won't completely go away for some, and some won't make it, sadly. And they're okay with that. Because for the mass of people, it's the safest way to redeem, is to take all the enthusiasm and the energy out of it and completely pump fake the enemy to a point where they have lost all the ability to counter the goodness that's coming out with anything bad. It's not a popular opinion. I know people don't like to hear that. I've lost friendships over sharing that opinion on a consistent basis. But when you look at what they're doing, they're pump faking. Party in Iraq, party in impeachment proceedings in the U.S., exchange centers being ready, people exchanging. All of that might be true, but what that does is it creates the anticipation for immediate and imminent release, which then launches attacks by the bad guys. And then they reveal their position. And some of these attacks they've been planning for months, years, decades, and they blow their wad, excuse the expression, they blow their wad early, and then they got nothing left. So by the time you really do release, you really do let it go, the word spreads around like wildfire, half the people aren't even paying attention anymore. The other half are somewhat indifferent about it, and the bad guys have no more tricks in their bags to stop it. Now, from our point of view, we're the diehards. We're the people that are constantly paying attention. We believe it. We know it. We trust in our research. We trust in the time we've put in. We trust in specific people that have consistently come forward with good information. Not always the most accurate in terms of timing, but certainly we've learned a lot from them and grown, to have a security and a knowing about this, which will benefit us when we go into negotiate our exchange, because we'll be calm about it, because we'll have studied and been educated on what we need to know, versus people that are just going in there after being gifted or something, and their eyes are so wide because they can't believe the zeros that are getting thrown at them, and they hyperventilate, and then they get lost because they just won't have the consciousness to sit still and be able to do the transaction competently. We won't have that problem, but we will have the endurance record of Job, because we're getting bombarded with pump fakes, and from our perspective, we have to keep reporting on what might be tonight, what might be this morning, what might be the end of the week, what might be, end of the month. We just don't know when they're going to go. There is some flexibility to the plan. I go back to Eisenhower, running the Allied troops in Normandy a lot, and running Operation Overlord, where he had, 1 million soldiers, and he had to get them from, Britain, England to France. He had to get everybody over and try and save as many as he could, as well as, defeat the bad guys. And the bad guys knew where they were coming. They knew about the exact place that they were coming. They knew what they were looking and fighting against. They had prepared for it with machine guns, and they had booby-trapped the beaches. And I mean, it was basically a suicide gauntlet mission. And Eisenhower had to figure out a way to distract them just enough so that they would have the advantage when they struck. And ultimately, they even used bad weather, thinking that there's no way they're going to attack in this kind of weather. And he used it to his advantage. Again, like when's to redeem on 9/11, it would be right after the planes hit, right? So, same thing with the Operation Overlord. The best time to go and attack is when the weather was at its worst. And basically that's what Eisenhower did. And it gave them enough of an advantage to get behind the enemy and also surprise them from the front. And they went in a completely different beach than the enemy thought they were going to go in on. So there it is. Just that little advantage created the safety to where even, within a few days they had completely taken the beach and controlled the whole coastline, which allowed for all that artillery and weaponry and vehicles and, of course, soldiers to flood in and start the process of retaking Europe. Anyway, a little history, but we're up against the same thing.
Next question. Have you heard that the price of gold will reset to its proper price on 7/6/17?
I haven't heard the date, but I have heard that it will reset to its true value, which, if you look historically at gold, it was never more than a few $100 an ounce. And, it's now over, I don't know, $1,400, $1,500, whatever it's at. That's not an accurate assessment of gold. Silver, the same way, it'll fall to its real value. I don't think it'll fall, 80% overnight, but they'll take it down. They're already starting to work with that a little bit. So,
do they still have currency baskets? First basket, second basket, third basket.
No. I understand what the basket theory is. It's not completely wrong. They did do currency resets within blocks of valuation, how far they were misvalued. The currencies that we have, like the dinar and the dong and the zim and the Afghani and the rupiah, even the Iranian rial, those are so misvalued. Those are so out of balance that they are, in essence, in a similar basket because they're so misvalued. But in terms of the process, every currency in the world has to be revalued, every one of them. And some are just revalued more than others. the mind bend of the reset, the real mind bend of the revaluation, if you will, of the currency values isn't the fact that the currency's reset on a screen and all of a sudden there's new rates. The opposite is true. The system of value is what changed. And so, for instance, the Philippine peso, I think, is around 48, 49 to 1 US dollar, meaning it's 48 times less valuable than the US dollar as one. Well, if you have 48 of rocks in your pocket versus one rock in your pocket, the pocket with 48 rocks, in my mind, is more valuable because it has more density, more raw assets. But under the Western world financial system, that one rock in your pocket is worth more than the 48. But that doesn't make any sense if all the rocks are equal. So what they're doing is they're just reversing that system, and they're reverting back to the way it really should be, which is if you have 48 of something, it's worth more than one of something. And so the Philippine peso will come out and ultimately be 48 more times more valuable than the U.S. dollar.
Okay, next question. If you have different currencies, should they go into different accounts so as to not commingle the funds?
Commingling isn't an issue anymore because all the funds are backed by the same collateral source. So if that's the way the banks instruct you to do it, I'm sorry?
I said that's gold.
Right, is gold. So everything's benchmarked off of gold. So whether you have VND or ZIM or Rupiah, it doesn't matter. Everything has a common value as it relates to gold. And so your credits, in theory, should all basically match up to that. If the banks want to redeem it in different accounts, that's really only for their accounting purposes to know how much ZIM redeemed versus how much Dong versus how much dinar, which is fine. And if that's the way they want to do it, that's the way they want to do it. But I don't really believe or think that that's going to be the case. And because all the currencies, in essence, are coming off the same collateral source, and that collateral source values the currencies accurately. And so whatever you have to bring in. So let me give you an example. Let's say you had Philippine peso, Mexican peso, and you had Canadian dollars, and you took them all into an American bank and said, I want to convert all of these currencies. And they give you a value for each, and they say, well, you'll get so much for the Canadian dollar, so much for the Philippine peso, so much for the Mexican peso, and the total amount would be $10,000. You'll say, okay, great, I'll take it, and they put the $10,000 into your checking account or savings account. Do they split those three things up? No, because the system of value is the same. So I think the same will happen when we go in an RV.
If you have, should their accounts be non-interest-bearing custodian accounts?
Yeah, the non-interest-bearing custodian accounts were kind of dispatched with the new financial system. So all accounts are basically under the same guidance or compliance system now, which is coming out of Asia and not out of Brussels. And because of that, you're not going to be penalized if you're drawing interest versus if you want a quote-unquote 100% safe account where you're not drawing any interest, which allows them to draw all the interest. So I wouldn't worry about non-interest-bearing accounts. Those are things of the past, just like the FDIC is the $250,000 safeguard for your accounts is a thing of the past. It's 100% backed and guaranteed no matter what type of account you have.
Okay. Are LLC, Corp, Sole, and Spendthrift Trust all viable structures to open up your bank accounts with using these currencies?
The existing corporate structure, are they viable to open up the currencies? Yes, they are. I wouldn't do that. what I would do is I would open up a master currency account or a trust account for my currencies. And then what I would do is I would transfer money from that master account at a later date into my corporate accounts or into my LLCs or 501c3s or LC3s. And the reason is because the initial exchange is a non-taxable event. And I feel like that accounting should be its own universe. And all the structures and all the organizations that we built prior to the RV, in my estimation, should be kept separate. They can still be kept, but I just feel like from an accounting standpoint, it might be easier just to transfer money from the new accounts to the old accounts versus trying to shove the new money into the old accounts. Because you have to understand your accountants and your lawyers are going to see the old accounts, and they're going to see you got $1 bazillion out of nowhere because you didn't necessarily work for it or earn it. And it won't make any sense to them. So then you're asking professionals you've been working with some for 5, 10, 15, 20 years to suddenly understand how you generated billions, if not trillions of dollars in new wealth without anything really changing in your life. It wasn't like you created a cure for cancer and got paid by Pfizer, for the rights to license it. You just something changed so dramatically, and it'll raise questions. It'll raise your profile amongst your professionals, and I think it's best to try and keep all the new energy and all the new massive wealth away from the old structures, old entities, and professionals that you've been working with, and kind of bring them up to speed slowly versus, throwing 6 more zeros into your account and them being like, what the heck just happened, and having to explain it.
Next question. Hello, Yosef. I've known a while that my country, Singapore, has been tactically and cardinally positioned for this transition. Please shed more light on Singapore's role in what you alluded to many calls earlier on my country. I have always intuitively known this to be so. Thank you.
Yeah. So Taiwan, Singapore, these are where the elders went when they were dislodged from their country with Chairman Mao. And so you had this weird scenario where you had these nations that were running governments, and then all of a sudden the elders, come back and they dominate because they can. And there was a conflict of interest with what was and what is, and now a lot of that's getting, reversed, where Singapore is coming into the light again as a dominant economic power. Singapore is like what England is, basically. It's the financial hub of Asia, really. I mean, it's the new Hong Kong, if it wasn't before. I mean, it's amazing. Taiwan in the same way. That's why the struggle between the old regime and the new regime is such a conflict in Taiwan, because of the elders that occupied it while China was being fought for and reformed. China had to go through their own republic restoration on their own. It wasn't just in the United States. They had to fight. They had to fight for their land. The Rothschilds invaded, and they were determined to get hold of China. And the elders pushed back and eventually won. But we've all had to fight the cabal at some point.
Okay. Next question. Will the diplomatic status be automatic for all them holders, or just those wishing to obtain high sovereignty rates?
Right. So I've been looking at that. It's kind of my opinion, because the dinar and the dong, there's going to be tremendous wealth generated off of those currencies as well. The rupiah, same way. So it's my understanding, I know for the ZIM, that there are special sovereign trust accounts that are open for any size ZIM account, and it qualifies you for different things, different passports, different economic interest programs or private placement programs, wealth transference programs, and laws, you become basically your own little country in a good way, but you also then have the eyes of the world on you in terms of what you do. So I think any of these currencies potentially will yield that type of designation depending on how much money you have. If you have a handful of dinar, you're not going to get a sovereign account. But if you have pallets of dinar or pallets of dong, yeah, you'll be under a sovereign accounting too. And that just goes with the territory, guys. I mean, they're giving you the opportunity to live as kings, and when you live as a king, you have different sets of rules than living as a subject of a kingdom. So you got to kind of roll with the punches. If you do no harm, and if you do good things, and you don't, start wars and buy weapons and create overthrows of innocent countries, then you got nothing to worry about. If you go that direction, or your generations down the road when you're gone go that direction, they'll freeze your sovereign accounts and take them away from you. And all the effort and energy you worked for would be gone. But that would be true of any account, whether it be sovereign or regular, retail banking account. There's no more doing harm. There's no more starting wars. There's no more buying weapons for rebels. There's no more black op budgets. Everything can be seen on the new digital system. There's no place to hide with it.
Do we need to ask for diplomatic status, or will it be automatically applied?
I think it's a good question to ask when you're at the redemption center, especially depending on what currencies you have. I think to say, I've heard about these diplomatic accounts, and I want to know more about them. Do I qualify? What is it that I qualify? What are my requirements for reporting? What are my requirements for good stewardship in the world? What are my humanitarian requirements? I think those are all fair questions. I'm going to ask them just to have certainty, before I leave. I know they've been trained on the information, so they should have answers for me. I want to know what my compliance requirements are for taking this money and having this kind of wealth. How often do I have to report? What is my tax rate, if any? What are my international obligations? What are my freedoms? What are my requirements in terms of distributing humanitarian funds out to the world? How often do my private program structured payouts, when do they come in? On the first of what month? How quarterly, semi-annually? What are we looking at here? How long can I have these payments come in? What happens in the case of death and I die and transfer my trust? Can I do that freely? Does it have to have approval? What am I looking at in terms of owning this asset? Look at it like you're getting a new puppy, and you just have never had a puppy before. It's okay to ask every question under the sun. My advice to everyone out there is have your questions prepared, meaning written down. You knock them off one by one. You take notes on the answers, and that'll be convenient both for you because it'll be right there, and you don't know how you're going to be in the exchange. You might be all over the place because you're so excited or so nervous or so overwhelmed that you might have tears in your eyes and you can't see straight, And at least in that respect, you can give the piece of paper to the banker and say, can you just answer these questions for me verbally because I can't see straight right now, and then it's right there for you. I've always been an advocate of being over-prepared because you can always reduce down to the lowest common denominator, but it's really hard in the moment to work up and try and remember everything you wanted to ask because you just never know how your emotions are going to play out in a situation like that. It truly is unprecedented.
Okay. This question kind of been sort of answered about the diplomatic status, but she says, please discuss how exchanging a Zim note gives one a sovereign diplomatic passport. Explain what is a sovereign diplomat, please.
Okay. So there are sovereign accounts that when people are diplomats of a country, they have special accounts that are not taxed, which you've always heard the exchanges are not taxed because they're covered under a sovereign wealth treaty. And these accounts are not taxed, and they are sovereign in that they are property of the country that they originate from, and that if another country wants to tap into those accounts, they have to get the approval of that country before they, siphon any money or freeze it or whatnot. It's almost like you exist like a sovereign compound, right? In a banking sense, you're a sovereign entity. And the reason you're a sovereign entity, not only is this a sovereign event with the currencies, but the ZIM is a historical bond. It serves as a currency, but it, in truth, is really a historical bond. And the printing of that bond ended in 2009, and it is no longer in print, which makes it historical. The bond notes that are being issued now in Zimbabwe are a new issue, and thus a new currency. It's not the same series as the series that we hold from 2008 and 2009. So to hold ZIM bonds that once served as currency, they're now serving as historical bonds, and that's why they have a different redemption protocol with HSBC, as well as a military protocol, and so too would be the sovereign accounts, because the type of asset that you're redeeming versus just an international currency like the Vietnamese dong or the Iraqi dinar.
Next question. Must this type of situation be negotiated at the redemption center? You already answered that. Okay. Hold on. Is there a chance that okay, no. Okay. Different is.
If a train leaves Chicago and gets to Philadelphia 2 hours later, what? I'm sorry, what?
What were you saying?
Nothing. I was just having fun in the downtime.
Okay.
Solving some riddles.
Okay. After the delay from the June 10th anticipated Tier 4 closing, a number of fear-based questions have come up for me. So I'm not going to read the questions because they are pretty negative, but can you encourage this gentleman? My discernment muscle has sprained. I'm struggling financially with 2 kids, a wife, and being unemployed. I'm anxious, and I'm trying to be Christ-centered in my actions. So I'm not reading the questions, though, because they take you right there.
No, I get it. I trust me. I'm sure he speaks to a lot of people that are going through similar, what seems like insurmountable suffering.
Yeah, he said his doubt and fears are overwhelming, so please give him some kind of encouragement.
Yeah, we'll do a pro and con. The con is that the bad guys are doing everything they can to keep the lie going, and they're willing to die with the con in order to try and hold on to whatever last minutes of power or whatever assets they think they own in order to stay relevant in running the world. The pro is that there's no way that that's going to happen anymore, and we're in a very special time in human history where the transfer of wealth from the powerful to the weak is now, and you hold tickets into that event with your currency, and the military forces and the strategic forces that are transitioning this power from dark to light are going very slowly and very methodically, and to some extent they're fooling the bad guys into kind of revealing their plans before they release the money, because it's safer for your wife and your family and your city and your country and your continent for them to do that. And so the greater good here is to constantly suggest that they're going forward and even make it look like they're going forward and load up all the redemption centers as if they're going to use those redemption centers, which I've heard maybe they won't even use at all, which is a whole other issue. Can you imagine 7,430 redemption centers not being used? I mean, that's the level of deception potentially that exists here. So it doesn't help your current situation, but my feeling is if you understand the whole, sometimes it's easier to live with the moment, even if you're suffering. And the one example that I give in a larger scale is Zimbabwe, really the wealthiest country in Africa because of where they sit politically as well as what's in the ground. And their people are starving with no cash. Unemployment's through the roof. They're struggling to feed themselves, even though they have very fertile land. And it's because Zimbabwe is having to wait until the very last second so they don't appear too eager or too wealthy too soon and let the cat out of the bag internationally that they are now running the continent of Africa. And they're making not only their people suffer, but their politicians suffer and their whole continent suffer because nobody gets anything until everybody gets everything. And I think if we look at our suffering collectively versus individually, we might be a little bit more patient and certainly maybe appreciate the fact that if we haven't gone yet, it's because it's not safe enough yet. And when it is safe, we will go, and it will be abundant, and it will have been worth the wait.
Okay. This question for Yosef. Are we still expecting a flat rate for those with only one Zim note?
Well, you can get a flat rate. You can get the screen rate. You can negotiate a lower rate if it's too much for you. You can potentially negotiate a higher rate if you get in within the first, week of redemption. So I think that's really more up to the individual than it is up to the amount of currency or where it is that you redeem necessarily. The elders are giving everybody a chance to do as much good in the world as they desire. And if you desire to do good, let the people know at the redemption, exchange center and ask them for whatever money you feel will achieve that goodness in your heart out into the world. And if that's more than what's on the screen rate, then I encourage you to go get it. And if it's less, I encourage you to take less and not feel bad about it. Either way, you got to be honest with yourself. Right, Dr. WC? You got to be honest.
Yep. That's right.
Got to be honest.
Are the elders and new powers that be upset that the release of the GCR is being delayed so much, or do they not care about how long it is taking?
They don't care. They don't care.
Okay. Next question.
And I mean that in the most loving way too. They don't care in the sense that they're here to release this gift to the world, and they have to make sure it's on the right footing before they do it. They have to. They have to. And they've waited hundreds of years to do this. Hundreds. So to them, another week, another month, another year, in some cases, it's no big deal. To us, it's life or death. To them, it's kind of the job description.
So it says, is Trump's resignation a hard requirement for GCR release? Or can the GCR release occur while he's still in office? If he's over the corporation, does he have to resign Does the corporation have to really say goodbye, which they're supposed to be over now, before this takes place?
No, great question. Great question. The answer is no, he does not have to leave office, which has confused me over the course of time. So the USA Inc. defaulted in December of 2012. It took 3 years to go through bankruptcy court internationally and work through a strategy of how they're going to disperse up the assets of the United States, how they're going to re-release the money, how they're going to transition the government, how they're going to transition the military, and China and Russia and all the other creditors were big players in that. And the strategy you're seeing with Trump is the strategy that China and Russia chose, not just what the cabal agreed to. So that's kind of weird. So in a way, Trump is acting benevolently because he either doesn't know it or because he's agreed to it, basically being the villain and ultimately, allowing himself to be destroyed reputation-wise and certainly politically, ultimately to be impeached. So whether he knows it or not, that is his fate. And because it's his fate, that is what the Chinese and the Russians and the rest of the world chose for the United States in order to reconcile their debts with our Federal Reserve Bank and our U.S. Treasury. So all of that kind of factors in. That transference happened sometime in the summer of 2015. That's when John Boehner retired, when the Pope came to town, and he basically defaulted the USA Corporation and replaced everybody was replaced, and anybody that was willing to come back and be part of the Republic was allowed to return, but they had to follow strict rules or lose their amnesty. That's why you're seeing still a lot of familiar faces in Congress and in the Senate. They're all on a tether, and they're all on a scripted program. And they put Paul Ryan in to run the legislative arm of the country, and they put Joe Dunsford in charge of the military. And since then, we've kind of been functioning with that. The elections in 2016 either weren't real, and Trump is really there at the end in order to be the distraction so that we can bring forward the republic, the currency, the gold-backed, all the health care bills, all the tax reform, all the JASARA compliance elements that we need to achieve in order to be in lockstep with the rest of the world, or Trump is really the first republic president because we had a real election to some degree, and we have to wait until he's ousted, or at least close to being ousted, because Paul Ryan is the pick ultimately for the republic leadership moving forward by the Chinese and the Russians, and legally they have to allow an election and then they can transfer through the Constitution into a new leader. So it's kind of fractured in a way. I'm not exactly sure how legally it all played out, but basically what we got is Ryan's been secretly running the country since October 2015. Dunsford's been openly running the military since then. Obama and Biden stepped down as president and vice president in 2015. It's my understanding. And whether Trump is president or isn't president at this point legally, the image of Trump being president is still viable, and it needs to be relinquished, and he needs to resign in order to get to the truth of who's really running the country, and also to give credit as this massive wave of money hits the U.S. shore, that Paul Ryan be credited for that so that he can, win an election not only in the midterms in 2018 with his Republican buddies, but also in 2020 when he'll be made to run for president again. So it looks like it's all organic and fresh, but in reality everything is scripted right to the last sentence.
So we can't have two Republic presidents, him and Ryan. So it's either or. It can't be both.
Exactly. That's my point. legally, I don't know if there was even an election in 2016, sister. Do you remember when Trump took the oath and it wasn't really an oath? Remember that? When he took the oath on January 20th, and it really wasn't a full oath of office?
Well, that's because they all did that. They said United States. They don't say United States of America.
Okay, so maybe they did that because the election was a complete pageant as well, and Ryan never stopped being president since 2015. But
he couldn't start and stop.
But if you look at the Jassara, compliance mandates, you have to have an election. So what you saw
120 days, right after Jassara, after Nassara is announced, they're supposed to have one.
Well,
that has not. We haven't. So if it was just announced Thursday, then that means they got an election to have.
Well, that may be. That may be, and they may not count the vote. I've heard rumors that they're going to throw out the electoral vote and do a revote, and not.
Now that's already been done. Are we truly in a time loop?
No, I mean
that has already been done.
In 2016?
This is 2016.
Okay, but what I'm saying is they might throw that out.
See, you know what? The thing, okay, this is it right here. If you're vibrating on the fifth dimensional level, then you can see that this thing is keep looping around and around and around. Because they're doing the same thing over and over and saying the same thing over and over. So you have to step outside of what it appears and step into what is actually happening in order to see that this thing is, we keep hearing this, it's the same thing over and over. Okay. Now, we already had that. So how's that going to happen again? Okay. We truly are not operating in parallel dimensions.
So let me use Britain as an example.
Okay.
When we had the Brexit referendum and David Cameron stepped down, remember that?
Yes.
We thought that Britain then became Jassara compliant because they had an election and replaced their leader. But the truth of the matter, sisters, they had a referendum. They didn't really have a full vote of all their leaders. The full vote of all their leaders happened this past week. And so while you feel that might be a loop-around, time loop situation legally, universal law, the morality, there were 2 elections, but only one really took every vote and every township and every city into an account, versus one was just a referendum that got rid of the leader. And what I'm saying is, if UK did 2 votes, then I think the United States at some point is going to, in essence, do 2 votes. And you're telling me it's 120 days after Jassara is announced. I'm not even calling it Jassara because, to me, it's a global, galactic thing. It's not a national thing. So everybody has to do it. And if they haven't done it already, then they have to. And so I don't quite understand where we are in terms of the Jassara implementation in relationship to the election. They say a lot about the U.S. elections that the vote counts are not interfered with. They say that quite a bit, which leads me to believe that they're actually using the 2016 vote count as the actual U.S. election, the Jassara-compliant U.S. election. And then what they're doing, whether it was going to be Clinton or Trump, they were going to impeach them through a slow drip of negative, albeit truthful, information about their dirty dealings and force them out of office. So whether Clinton had won and the Republicans were now impeaching Clinton, or the Republican candidate Trump won and the Democrats are now impeaching Trump, it was always going to get to Ryan in either direction, legally by Jassara compliance. Mm-hmm. This is my understanding of things. So to say the 2016 election completely didn't matter, I don't know that that's true. And to say that it completely mattered, I don't know that that's true either, because I believe the latter, in that they set the election up so whether Clinton or Trump won, because they were both so dirty, a choice between herpes and syphilis, right? They were both so dirty they were easily impeachable, which would ultimately lead to the Speaker of the House being third in command, whether you had a Democrat or Republican in office. And that's why they put Ryan in 2015, was because that was the long-term strategy that they had decided on in the 2012 to 2015 work through. Now, I could be wrong. I usually, am certainly wrong about dates, but I think that's it. And I thought they were going to impeach Trump or Clinton or whoever won the second that they won, or even before they got to the Electoral College vote in December. That's when I thought they were going to do it. But when you look at all the elections in all the big countries around the world, they needed 6 more months to get to now before they could replace the U.S. leader and get us Jassara compliant. So I don't know. Okay. I don't understand it all, and until I can read the full breadth of Jassara and look at the actual, the minutia of some of the requirements. I've seen bits and pieces from different things, and people have showed me different things, but I haven't been able to read the whole document in its entirety, and so I can't really give a straight answer in terms of this is what it is from like a legal standpoint. But I know this: they will not allow a country to move forward in any way, shape, or form unless they're in complete Jassara compliance. That includes Israel, Ukraine, Russia, China. It doesn't matter. Everybody has to be compliant, or nobody gets to go forward. And that's the leverage they've been using on every country in the world to get right with God or get right with Jassara, because we've got to reset the species and reset the planet. It's more important than you kind of having it 95% right. You got to have it all right. So.
Well, the sorrow can't be completely, fully released, not released, but revealed until it has been announced. Well, so you're not going to be able to read that until we actually, it's for the protection of the people.
Well, until we've all completed the compliance requirements, every nation, it won't be released.
That's right.
But by the time it is announced,
I'm talking about read, so you'll be able to read it. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because it has been it's sealed by the U.S. Supreme Court justices.
We're in a really weird transition time. I mean, we're like teenagers in our 13th, It's like we got braces and buck teeth and gangly legs and gangly arms, and we're going through a metamorphosis from caterpillar to butterfly, and we're crawling out of our shell now, and it's getting a little bit better. It's getting a lot better actually, but it sure feels pretty ugly when we're going through it. Unless you're completely asleep, then you don't even notice. Pass the beer and turn on the ball game,
Yeah. So the next question says, this does not make sense. Why are impeachment proceedings necessary when he has already agreed to resign and supposedly have a pre-taped resignation?
Because there's a timing element. It induces the cabal and whatever the minions are that are left. They don't really have a higher mind to make decisions for them anymore, or to strategize control mechanisms and strengthen them. They're all on their own. But there are a few rogue elements out there that can still do harm. So even though they're not unified in their abilities, there are individuals that can do things to hurt people, like you saw today in Virginia. And that's a rogue element of the cabal. That's not a coordinated element. It's a rogue element. And by pump faking, with the impeachment proceedings today, they were able to draw that out. Now, the same can be said for Trump's resignation. I know he's already done the tape. The same as Netanyahu. They're holding it over their heads in that they can release it at any time they want. And so that kind of keeps them in check. So it's all scripted for a reason. I'm sure they have a set number of pump fakes they want to accomplish, and if for whatever reason they feel they need to do more because they haven't drawn out all the evil, then they'll do more. But I wish I could give you. We always think we get to the end of the line and think there's no way they can do another pump fake. No way. On the books, they've got everybody Jassara compliant. They've got England. They've got France. They've got Israel cornered. They've got the Arabia cornered, and next thing you know, the cabal springs a Qatar situation and tries and drives the U.S. Air Force base out of Qatar, which would basically cripple our Middle East operation. So, they tried to take out 22 members of Congress today. And those are, structural things that don't really affect you and I on the streets here in Middle America, but it does affect the structure of government, and it certainly affects the military. And because it still affects the government structurally, they are uncomfortable releasing the finances until structurally they have everything the way they want it. That is why we haven't seen the resignation yet.
Okay.
It's a complicated world, Dr. W.C.
Okay. Next question. Hold on.
Edward, you still with us?
No.
Or are you asleep?
I think he's gone.
Indeed.
Okay. Okay, she says, I was discussing the Bible with a friend, and we were talking about Revelation. Since the new powers that be has been working hard to prevent World War III and wars with nuclear weapons, famine, and etc., how does all this relate to Revelation since we're in the end of times?
Well, what times are ending is the better question.
She says, no worries. Just trying to see how this new life is going to be in relation to what is written in the book of Revelations in the Bible, which we all follow.
Well, okay. Not everybody follows the Bible, but
she's talking about the majority of people on this call.
I understand. You have to say the Bible is a accumulation of divine word of God and the horrifically rebellious, toxified word of man. And, it's been rewritten so many times and has so many different interpretations, and yet there's a truth about the Bible that anybody that reads it can't deny. And so, Bible scholars that go to the letter on every word in the Bible, I kind of scratch my head just knowing the history of the Bible. And the fact that I'm a believer in Christ, I'm right there with you, that I am the truth, the light, and the way, and the only way to God is through me. I'm there. I'm right there with you. I in my soul, understand that to be so. So I don't completely discount the Bible, and I also don't believe every word of the Bible in the way that it's formulated. So to say the book of Revelation is all wrong is incorrect, and to say the book of Revelations is verbatim correct, I don't feel is correct either. So then the question I ask is, the question was about, end-time prophecies in the book of Revelation and the apocalypse. Well, maybe the apocalypse is a metaphor for the defeat of evil. instead of the defeat of man or goodness. Christ's return. Well, maybe the return of Christ is a cellular nature within every cell on the planet. Maybe it's his physical form. Maybe he's already here. I'm open to anything that's truthful and divinely aligned with God. I'm open to anything, from any book or any verbal telling or any sensation that I feel is truly God. And I use my own discernment mechanism, as I encourage all of you to use your own discernment power to reveal the truth of God to you through the course of your day and your life. In terms of the end times, I don't think the world's going to end. I think, if anything, the world's going to ascend and ascend and ascend and ascend, and one day we won't need a physical reality to exist and to understand and to learn lessons. And if you want to count that as the end times, okay, I'm all for that. That our consciousness is so high we don't need physical form to understand anything because we understand everything. But to try and convince me that the world is bad and it's horrible and it's deadly and there's the apocalypse and there's blood and the four horsemen and the seven signs or the seven trumpets and seven angels, to me that's a metaphor versus verbatim. To me, as a believer of Christ exclusively. So, from my perspective, I'm witnessing end times. I'm witnessing revelations. I'm witnessing prophecy. I'm participating in it, and so are you. And so I see it as a loving event versus something that's cataclysmic or apocalyptic. And it's just the way I understand it, I guess. And I just encourage everybody, especially people that are born again or devout of their faith in Christ, have been raised within whatever church or whatever system of religion. I think that's great in terms of fellowship and unity. I just think everybody has a personal relationship with God that is unique, and it's between you and Him and the Father that created you, of how you experience life and go through it. And for me, Christ is the highest vibrating pathway of God. I'm open to any form or anything that is of a higher vibration. I just, quite frankly, haven't found it in my 47 years. But I'm open. My interpretation of it is Christ is the truth and the way of the light, because he was a perfectly vibrating, a God frequency human being. That's why he was both man and God. He was perfectly attuned to the will of God and thus acted in a godly manner, even to the point of his crucifixion and his resurrection and ascension. You cannot kill the eternal. Anyway, I guess it's how you interpret the end times being good or bad. I interpret the end times as good. And so I differ in a lot of, biblical scholars who I'm sure have studied the Bible much more than I, but in my understanding, having read Revelations a few times, I don't see it as fire and brimstone. I see it as enlightenment and grace. So don't invite me to the church on Sunday, but if you want to have a talk about God and Christ, let's go have a cup of coffee,
Okay. Cannot hear Yosef at all. I know you said that you could, question, maybe, but I can't. Worse than usual. Sorry to report and bug you, but maybe, Dr. WC, you can try to correct this again. Hugs to you. So they still can't hear you well.
I'm so sorry. Just so everybody knows, I'm doing the same thing that I've done for the last 7 calls. I'm driving around in circles so that I don't have to put the phone to my head, because I can't find a pair of earphones that gets me good volume, because everybody yelled at me about low volume with old earphones. So.
Okay. Well, the next one says, Okay, question for Yosef. Do you know of any clearinghouse network type of plans for Zim holders?
Any clearinghouse networks, like people that will take in Zim and exchange it and put it into trade and give you an exchange for it before the redemption starts? What do you think that means, Doctor?
Somebody flipping them.
What's that?
I mean, someone is flipping them. If they have the money to buy them and give you a cheaper rate, and then they're going to go flip them and get a higher rate.
Right. That's not a holding company. That's a middleman. That's a flipper. So all they're doing is they know the true value. They're offering you less than that value. They pay you, and then they go convert it at a higher rate. Now, what a lot of flippers in this industry will do is they'll promise you a rate. They'll even contractually promise you, and they'll take your currency, and then they won't even give you the rate that they're offering. They won't give you anything. They'll just take your currency and run. And then you won't be able to find them because it'll be at some weird Cayman Island address.
So you land on the beach and bump into them.
That's right. You have to be very, very prudent before you give your tangible assets over to a flipper or somebody that's declaring themselves as having unique relationships with elders. I've been through a lot of this with different type of deals: historic bonds, corporate paper, uncut currencies from the Reagan era, American historical bonds from the Federal Reserve, Wells Fargo bonds. It's just gold and dust and diamonds, and I mean it's endless the promises that people make in trying to get you to send you your raw assets, and then they don't perform. It's just an endless lie. And then you have no recourse because nobody will help you because they can't talk about sovereign exchanges. The FBI will deny it. The police won't know what the hell you're talking about. So there's no way to get restitution for being harmed. You're completely on your own, and they know that, and they take advantage of the suckers trying to get into the game.
Next question says, hold on. Okay, same thing. I got to delete that. It's Eduardo saying I can't hear you. Let me delete that. He's gone. Okay. Call access. Tier 3. Is Tier 3 complete, and does that drive Tier 4? What is the realest window, hour to hour, days, weeks, thoughts?
Well, I had this conversation with a banker tonight, and he really felt we were in a minute-by-minute situation. I feel we're more in a hour-by-hour, but I wouldn't hold it past a week-by-week going to the end of June. So, we're in a bit of a window here for a variety of things that need to happen. There's some massive trades on the books that are processing right now. I'm not exactly sure of performance. I'm just not. I work really hard to try and be sure and try and gather as much information, but I just feel that they have a fluid trigger in that they can declare it's RV day, anytime they want to, which leaves no real hard structural certainty for us, but it also leaves no hard structural certainty for the bad guys to harm us. So they're as lost as we are. And in a way, that's a really good thing because we're kind of used to poverty. They've never experienced it before, so they're a lot more anxious, which will lead them into a lot of mistakes. The mistakes, as you saw today, they made one today, so that's gone. I don't know. I just try and just stay really focused on the blessing, and every day we're made to wait, they give us more money because they raise the rates on the currency. So I look at it from that point of view, and the fact that I'm safe and that my asset is appreciating versus, bitching and moaning that I'm not infinitely wealthy, blessing the world yet, because that doesn't help anybody.
Okay. Hold on.
Nope.
Okay, yes, I'm okay. Okay. Yeah, since you mentioned that you would be willing to discuss the Zim rates tonight, please review the current rates if possible.
It's over double digits, and that's the last you'll get out of me for rates. And it's going to end up in triple digits. But when you redeem will be whenever they pull the trigger, and that'll be the number on the screen, and that's what you get. And you'll be somewhere between 2 and 3 digits. How about them apples? I mean, that's quite a thing to say after suffering through, 4-cent Zim or even less than that. So, but the truth is, whether it's 1 digit, 2 digit, 3 digits, it's all infinite wealth, because you'll be generating interest off your principal, and you'll struggle to spend your interest.
Okay. Returning to yoga. Are we currently in the segmented rollout? It's been said over the last several weeks, people are quietly exchanging. Is that true? If so, why haven't they had to wait for safety and Trump to be gone?
Well, it depends what they're exchanging. They're not exchanging Zim per se and getting paid for it. They might be putting Zim on the book so they don't have to go against the rush when it all happens. And then if it's already on the books and already in the bank, then the bank will just fund the SKR and the exchange will be complete. But and then they don't have to go in with the crowd. They're trying to take all the account holders that are current and segment them out so they don't feel that they're part of the herd, number one. Number two, they're taking groups and SKRing them and going through. And number three, they're taking smaller currencies like the dong and the dinar, and they're test exchanging at lower rates just to see the process, see the length of time, see how people react, and indeed crediting them with real accounts. But the scope of money that we're dealing with here in Zimland is nothing compared to the smaller exchanges that are going on. Don't feel you're missing anything. You're not missing anything. Nobody's getting ahead of you in line. Okay? It's not that. It's really more about your protection, your safety, and that once they start this RV, they never get to stop it. It never ends. It's like an eternal thing. They'll start it, and the new system will be completely full, intact. You'll be able to wire money at any amount to anywhere in the world, to every country in the world, to do anything you want to do that does no harm, to get money to anybody you want at any number, and do it within less than 42 seconds. So it really, truly is worth the wait, even though some of us have a much more difficult situation at home and at work than others. And certainly some countries have very different. I mean, how would you like to be in Venezuela tonight, where they don't have any food on the shelf, or be in Zimbabwe, where they have no ability to get cash They can't. They're giving out coins to people because they're not giving them paper money. I mean, it's bananas. So look at the blessing instead of the burden, and just keep lying to yourself that everything's great and grand and perfect until it is, because it will become that.
Okay. Do you know if the high-rise fires in London was cabal backed?
Well, anything negative is cabal backed. So let's start there. The Ariana Grande concert was a false flag, but the most recent attacks I think were real. So, you really got to take it on a case-by-case basis now, and not get too wound up either way, because, when the thing happened this morning, I'm like, that's fake. It's fake. No, it's real. Wait, it's real. Wait, I'm watching a real live event. And it stunned me, because I'm the first one to say it's a false flag. First. I go online, I look for things, I couldn't find anything. I'm like, oh, my God. And then people were crying. I saw congressmen really crying with their children. I'm like, either this is the best false flag I have ever seen, or this really happened. And I just kept watching, and it just kept ringing true, and ultimately it was true. And so we're really in a changing environment where we're actually going to get real news, which is bananas.
Next question. You have mentioned that the cabal is no longer a threat, yet at the same time it's the cabal that keeps the pump fake going. Continuing.
Right.
If there are so few cabal left, why can't the new powers that be just jail them, lock them up, or take them out?
Okay. Perfect example is in the fall. If you've ever grown up in a cold weather climate, and the season is going to change. Winter's coming and the fall is just breaking, and the leaves are starting to change, and you can feel a little chill in the air in the mornings, and you just know the earth is changing into winter. And you get stung by a mosquito that's hanging around. Well, you don't really worry much about the mosquitoes, because the mosquitoes won't be there long, because the earth is changing, and it'll freeze them out and they'll die. That's what's happening to the cabal. The around them is changing, the vibration is changing, and they are dying off like mosquitoes. Now, are there a few mosquitoes left that are stinging? Yeah, because that's what mosquitoes do. They sting you, and they suck your blood, which is what they tried to do today. But ultimately, the earth is changing, the vibration is changing, and they physically won't be able to sustain life. And so that's why I say the cabal is annihilated and obliterated, because I feel we're that far enough along where we're getting reality finally in the human experience versus the faux reality that they've offered us for our entire lives.
Okay. Yosef, you have heard, Yosef, have you heard where the Wells Fargo Denardon group is on the list? Are they tier 3?
Anybody that has intaken currency and has done so through the guidance and the approval of the Chinese Dragon family, specifically the Red family that oversees it, would be considered a tier 3. There are not many of those. And so when you tell me about the Wells Fargo group, or you tell me about the Admirals group or places like that, my sensation is that those groups have relevance in the tier 3 community, which is a step above retail banking. It's private group contracted rates. Now, interesting enough, they're lower than what the T4 and T5 rates will be, but ultimately they would classify as a T3 category. because they have pre-negotiated a rate with the actual end buyer, the collateral source, for intake. And sometimes they've intaken the currency, and sometimes they've just contracted the rate and kind of gotten your name and your phone number. And if you choose to go with that group when the RV hits or when they call, you can. If not, and you haven't sent your currency in, then you can keep it and just choose to redeem, on your own. The Admirals Group turned out to be not financially a positive thing in terms of maximizing the investment. At the time, it was great because we all thought that was the only pathway to get our Zim redeemed and or to get $10 dong and $20 dinar. But as it turns out, that neither was the top end for any of those currencies. And the Admirals Group turned out to be basically a intake source for the Chinese Eller to get currency off the street in bulk at low rates. They'll pay out. They'll pay out the way that they promised, exactly the way that they promised. But the overall structure of things is they got so far ahead of it, and they were the first to intake currency with guaranteed, contracts and paymasters, which was great for those of us searching for a place to get a higher contracted rate. It ended up being lower than the actual screen rate, which was kind of genius when you think about it from the Chinese point of view. They play the long game, guys. They really do play the long game. And most of us are living paycheck to paycheck. Have never had more than $10,000, $15,000 in our checking accounts, and we just don't think like that.
Okay. In regards to the middleman buying the Zim and flipping it, why would a middleman buy your son and flip it when they can buy it on eBay?
Because you don't know any better, or because you're trying to hedge your bets and have multiple places to redeem just in case. And a lot of people said, "Hey, Yosef, should I put into this trade platform with the Zim?" And I'm like, "What for? You got 7,000 exchange centers. You got military bases that are rating to serve you at the highest possible rate with infinite sovereign rate contracts. Why are you sending your Zim away, 10 notes to this clown in Switzerland because he has a supposed trade platform for Zim?" It made no sense to me. But some people were like, "Well, I've got so many notes, why not just throw a couple at it, just in case?" And that's the con. They know that. They know that that's a normal hedging strategy for good investors. And so they play on it, and they take your currency, and chances are you'll never see it again.
Okay. Well, this one right here.
By the way, the whole entire insurance industry is a con in that same respect. They know people want a little added security in case of the worst case scenario, so they say, "Listen, send us a monthly payment of $30 a month, and if anything ever goes wrong, we'll cover the cost of your driveway, your house, your medical payments." But the actuarials or the numbers actually are in their favor because they know only so many people will lose their house, lose their home in a fire, lose their job, or medical insurance, will cover certain amounts of things. I mean, every time they get a new client, they make money because the odds are with their favor. And so insurance as a concept really is a scam. In Asia, they don't have insurance. Everybody pays for everything in cash. Literally, you come to buy a house, and you come with a suitcase of money. When you go to the doctor, you come with a briefcase of money.
So
it's crazy.
So the follow-up then is, what motivates the flipper?
Greed. I can steal from you without you knowing it, and you'll be happy to do it, and you'll give me your money. It's a scam.
Now, are those greedy people standing, laying in wait to try to re-empower themselves?
Well, a lot of those greedy people have already been taken off the street. So it might be greedy people that are re-energizing old programs. It might be new greedy people. It might be some people that really have the best interest of people in mind, but are attached to somebody that has convinced them they're of the light and they're really not, and they ultimately get dragged into a very negative situation. Just hold on to your currency. Just stop. I don't want to talk about flippers anymore. It's a non-issue because it's not real. The bank will take your money. The bank will take your currency. That's the whole point of the currencies going international. Let's just stay focused on the reality and not keep looping around the fantasy.
Well, the next question, I don't quite get it, but I'm going to read it to you. Since so many of us in currency land are suffering financially, and since Nasara has not been implemented yet, how would the new powers that be feel about us in currency land getting together to teach each other on how to use the remedies that were created for us under Admiralty law? I mean, why? Why would you? Anyway, remedies such as creating our own promissory notes to pay off our debts, or using closed checking accounts, etc. That will certainly help out a lot if we can do that right now while waiting. Would that invalidate our ability to exchange?
It wouldn't invalidate it, but it's wasted energy. It's just, you're trying to avoid the suffering, which I completely get, but the suffering is part of the experience. We all have to wait. There's nobody above it or below it. I know some very wealthy people already that are annoyed that they haven't converted their currency already and bitch and moan all the time, and they have to wait too. Everybody has to wait, whether you have a lot or a little or none. It's not about you getting rich. It's about setting the world correctly,
So my question in that is, wouldn't it be illegal or unlawful to use old checks to pay off anything?
I don't want to.
I
don't want to deal with anything old.
That's writing a bad check.
I don't want to get into writing bad checks. There's a reason to write bad checks. Wait for the exchange. Just wait. You can't hurry love. You can't force the sun to come up. You can't move a mountain in a minute. You have to wear it down over time like water. Stop fast forwarding the universe. It's exhausting. Taking these questions about fast forwarding the universe for me is exhausting. Stop. Let it come. Let it be what it is. Stop asking a 7-year-old to be a 10-year-old. It's like a freshman getting to college and wanting to get through 4 years of college in a year and a half. It's like, why are you killing yourself to do that? Enjoy college. And I know you guys are hurting. I'm not. But the reason you're hurting is because you've seen change on the horizon. You positioned yourself, and now you're annoyed because it isn't here yet. And you're relying on gurus, and I'm as much to blame as anybody. But you're relying on other people to determine your happiness and have expectations over your joy. And you give away your joy to people without them even asking for it. You just give it away. Just like people are giving away their currency to these flippers for no reason because they hope that they'll take care of them. Take care of yourself. Be self-reliant. If you're not making money, go make money. If that's what you're looking to accomplish. The problem is this new money has a new energy. It's a new world. It's literally a new world. It's like getting off the boat, when they came to this country, this continent in the first place, and they wanted to build a new world. They didn't get the creature comforts of the old world. Well, you're not getting the creature comforts of the old financial system. That's why you're suffering. You've drawn a line in the sand spiritually that says, I demand change. I demand things to be closer to the will of God than further away. And I'm not going to accept the old way of doing business. I'm not going to accept the old money. I'm not going to accept the old jobs. I'm not going to accept the old education, the old food products, the old everything, because it's not sustaining life. It's destroying it. You're fighting a war between truth and illusion, and you've chosen the side of truth. And you're suffering while the illusion still has some relevance. But like that mosquito that's stinging you in late fall, it's not going to live through the winter. And I feel the pinch too, guys. I pretty smart guy. I could probably go out and do some really amazing, good, positive things and make a crap load of money. And I'm waiting around right there with you, right with the meek. I'm right in the middle of the meek, and I'm suffering because I'm making a choice to wait. The difference potentially between you and I in the waiting is that I've been waiting for 12 years, whereas some of you might have been waiting for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, or however long you've been waiting.
We have some that have been waiting 30 or 35 on this call.
Yeah, but sister, when they call in, they're laughing and joyful, and they they have a completely different perspective than the person that's been waiting 3 years, right?
Some of them do. There's a lot of totally different perspective. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you have a different perspective. You've been waiting since the prosperity packages, since the 90s, and some of the people.
No, well, I've only been waiting since I only got in this in 2010 as far as the packages and stuff. My area was the teaching, learning, research.
Okay.
So, but
well,
my attitude is different because I'm not chasing and standing still. I'm moving forward with the purpose that God has given me.
Right.
So that's different, and that's what I've been teaching my callers.
Right. Well, I've been dealing in this since late 2005, early 2006, sincerely. And now, here we are in 2017. And I'm as frustrated as everybody else. I guess I've just tried to accept a different consciousness because I know it has to change. I know the world needs to flip. It can't sustain itself under the current system. I know it. I've known it for a long time. And I've positioned myself, my family, generations, my communities, my country, several continents, I've positioned to prosper through research and study when the moment came. And when the moment comes, like pregnancy, the pain of labor will go away. And the joy and the rapture of the birth will have been worth all the suffering. Going back to, years and years and years of not having to suddenly having an infinite amount of money to accomplish anything I choose to manifest in form. And I will have earned the scars of a job, well earned, because I was loyal to God, and I kept following my God voice. And I think the people that have children, or they struggle at work, or they struggle in family relationships and dynamics, it's because they're drawing closer and closer to God, and their family isn't. And that's a really tough choice, God, or man. That's a toughie, And I've chosen God. I've chosen God. And you know what? Those that are supposed to be around me have stayed, and those that didn't have left or are leaving, and I've accepted that.
Separation.
I've accepted that. And I try and find joy of the experience even in the loss. I try and find meaning in it. Just as when I have when I have infinite resources, I'll find meaning in torn sweaters and ripped jeans and children that hand me dandelions for, a gift. When, I can buy fields and cities of dandelions. I mean, I just really want to emphasize the period of time in which we exist and are awakened to this moment is a blessing beyond understanding that we're even here and alive to experience this. The gift, the true gift of this is just our soul. It's just to be here, just to experience this. Whether you're suffering through it or you're joyful through it or you're meandering through it or wandering or miserable or laughing like crazy, the gift is just life. Your breath is the redemption. Every time you breathe, you're redeeming in the source. And I point this out in words, and sometimes it hits people in the heart, sometimes it doesn't. I do calls, sometimes it hits people in the heart, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe I'm not the guy to deliver the message to you about the value of the breath of life, but I'll keep saying it. Because it's just the truth. And I have to remind myself constantly to surrender to that, the gift of life and the joy of just being here. And being able to smell and being able to touch and being able to taste and being able to see and being able to breathe and being able just to get up in the morning and experience it all over again. Even if the day is hard and I'm suffering and I don't have what I feel I'm worth. I'm still here. So there must be a utility to me. There must be a need because God doesn't make mistakes. He's not inefficient at all. He wastes not a blade of grass. So get out of your ego, Yosef, and get into appreciation and gratitude. Because not only are you, in the RV, but you're participating in it actively and you're changing lives, through being awakened. And you guys are all going to have your own ministries. You're all going to have your own ministries. You're all going to be Yosefs. You're all going to be the leader. You're all going to be human angels, and people are going to pass by you and just want to touch the hem of your skirt and your jeans, and they're just going to be amazed that you just wrote checks that size or that you're just so carefree and abundant. They're not going to know your suffering. They're not going to know your days of not having. They're not going to know your lack. They're not going to know when everybody was on your doorstep begging for money, demanding money, or your family members quit on you, or your wife or your husband quit on you, or your child thought you were insane and tried to have you put away. They're not going to care. You know what they're going to care about? You're feeding them. You're giving them jobs. You're giving them hope. You're taking care of their parents. You're taking care of their children. You're taking care of their parks and their animals, and their water, and they won't care that you suffered. They won't. You'll remember it, and you'll know. It'll never leave you. And that's maybe why God is putting you through this, so that you never forget what suffering feels like when you never have to economically suffer again, so that you can and will forever make it your life's mission to help those who do not have. We push away suffering like it's, I'm sorry, I'm preaching, but you can go to the next question. But it's very meaningful to me that people understand that the suffering they're experiencing isn't something they should just run away from. They should stare it right in the eyes and look at it and really ask where the blessing is in this uncomfortable period. I do.
Okay. Next question is, can a drug felon exchange that had bogus drug charges?
That has drug charges?
Bogus. A felon that had bogus, they're out of jail, they had bogus drug charges, and now they have currency. Can they exchange?
I really don't know the nature of the crime. I don't know where it stands in the courts. I think it's irresponsible for me to answer because I don't have all the facts from the question. But if you have active warrants against you, they will more than likely take you in versus let you exchange. So, but if you've served your time and you've done your penance and you have stayed clean, and I don't foresee a problem unless there's something that's outstanding that you're not telling us about, and it's on your record and you've been chalked for being a potential threat to the Redemption Center or others around you. I mean, there's no way for me to know that. You'll know that. And I would encourage those that don't want to go back to jail not to walk into a Redemption Center with currency if they've got an outstanding warrant. If it's traffic tickets or, late payments or bad credit, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about violent crime and federal offenses and that type of stuff.
Okay. Let's see. I think that's the last one. Well, you got several. Okay, let me do that. Hold on. The release. Okay, can Yosef explain what firm means in your FIT report? It says the RV release is all tied into this and is scheduled firm to occur before the end of Ramadan, which is June 27th. What is meant by firm? When it's been firm so many times before.
Right. Well, I can tell you what they tell me, or I can not tell you. I mean,
and that was his question.
I was told they have a firm date and they have a firm time, and I was told that I wasn't to be told, and that I should look in a window from the time I was asking to the end of the month, which.
And the second question is. Okay.
I was also told that it would be the end of Ramadan, or sometime before the end of Ramadan, because of zakat, where they gift out a portion of their earned money for the year, which ends at the end of Ramadan. So they wanted to get the money out to the Arab world before Ramadan ended.
Do you think this is a significant date for the release of the GCRC, with Iraq going or trying to go international? The calendar shows that Ramadan ends on Saturday the 24th. Thank you. 27th. All my best.
Yeah, it ends on the 27th. 26th, 27th, depending on who you ask. It has to do with the moon cycle. Iraq's not an issue. Iraq's just another country waiting. I know everybody talks about Iraq, and I don't even listen or pay any attention to Iraq whatsoever. I mean, I don't hold any dinar either, so I gave all of that away after I found out the value of the Zim. The dinar was irrelevant. I gave it away like popcorn at the movie theater, just because it wasn't relevant in relationship to the Zim. I did the same thing with my Vietnamese song. I gave it all away. So in terms of Iraq, there's nothing to report. I don't even really like to discuss it. I know a lot of people live for it because they grew up on the dinar in terms of understanding currencies and always like to know what's going on. But to me, it's irrelevant. What's going on in Vietnam is irrelevant. What's going on in Zimbabwe is more relevant to me because I own Zim, so I follow that very closely. But I really look more at the big rock structure of government, of elections, of who's president, what the IMF is doing and the World Bank are doing, and the new AIIB bank is doing. Like, how is that reformulating to change the world? What's the UN Security Council doing? What is Russia doing? What is China doing? What is their central bank doing? What is the they raised interest rates today at the Federal Reserve a quarter point. That's significant stuff. Structurally, that means everything's moving in the right direction. Again, I don't really focus on Mosul or Tikrit or Maliki or Abadi or any of the tweets. It's all nonsense to me. It's one country. It's important that they gain their sovereignty and their freedom, and I'm not trying to make that light of that. I'm just saying, in the broader scope of things, my understanding that Iraq is not the holdup, and that the holdup is really more structural in terms of world affairs versus any individual country in the Middle East. So I don't really focus on Iraq at all. And some people do, and that's fine. It's just not my thing. It's not where I feel the deal lies.
What happened the last week's info? Okay, what happened that last week's info about RV started, according to Fisher? Why was it true last week and not now? It was said that it could not be stopped.
It's still true. It was signed on the Thursday night on the 8th, which was Friday morning. It was supposed to go Friday night from everything we got, which would have been 12:01 on Saturday, which was June 10th. We stayed up all night Friday. We stayed up all night Saturday. We stayed up all night Sunday, and we didn't get it. We did, unfortunately, get some attacks that were done on the banking system at a cyber level. And we're told they were serious attacks, and they held back. So I don't regret making those predictions because that's what I was told. But I do have new, information that they're still in an any moment type of situation, and to be ready, even when things look bleak. If they said the darker things are, the closer we are. So the darker things appear, the closer we are. That's exactly what was said to me. And the example of 9/11 and redeeming after the planes or after the bombs went off in the building was the example given. That would be the ideal time to redeem as the buildings are coming down, because nobody would be focused on money. I just thought that was an interesting take. And then we had the attacks this morning, and I was very prepared at any moment for the RV to come this morning. And it didn't. So I'm doing a call.
Okay. All right, that is the last question in the queue. Let me look in my email, because somebody always sends something over there when I ask them not to. Give me a second.
Did we get some questions answered? Did we get some questions answered tonight, Dr. WC?
You answered quite a few questions tonight. Yes, indeed.
Did we create peace within our little community and confidence?
For some, depending on where they're vibrating.
Okay. I mean, probably the toughest thing tonight was some people hearing me. So if that's the worst thing, then maybe we had a good night. There's no reason to panic. There's no reason to worry. There's no reason to get angry. There's no reason to yell or scream or point fingers at anybody in the community. Just let it come. It's literally right here. What's the line in that movie, Swingers? You're so money you don't even know it. That's the way I feel about Zimland. You guys are so money you don't even know it. So if you really knew how wealthy you were, you wouldn't be upset in the least, so, or anxious. But until you know it, and for some people that means having it in their hands and being able to look at the accounts on a half an hour basis where you're running back to the computer to make sure you're really worth that much. if that's what you need to know that it's real, then I understand that. I understand it differently, and so I'm able to move forward and move to the next thing a little bit more and try and help people, get there so that they can plan for what life will be like post-RV instead of stressing out and trying to figure out what life is pre-RV. Any more, sister, or is that it?
No foolishness. I'm skipping over it. That's it on the questions. Okay, wait a minute. What's this? Yeah. Yeah, that's it on the questions that I could see.
All right, well, let's end it there. Let's just be grateful we had the time together and the questions we had. Let's just give praise and glory to Christ that is with us always and is here protecting us and making sure that we get through this period safely, alive, with our breath, with our health, with our families who are meant to be with us. And we give appreciation and gratitude to those who are choosing to leave us. And we're just thankful, Lord, for the time together, for the blessing of being alive during this period, to witness it firsthand, even though we're having to go through some difficult times, Lord. We're grateful for all the time that we get informed, and we're just so thankful that we have you to rely on and lean on. We don't understand everything. We don't need to understand everything, but we're still trying to gain knowledge and wisdom and understanding, Lord, through Christ, through you. And we're very expectant, but we're very understanding that there's a process, and we're going to let you handle it. We surrender everything that we are to you, everything that we understand to you, everything that we have had in our life, good and bad, and everything that we will have good and bad in our life. We accept them as graceful gifts from a loving God, and we love you so much. And we're so appreciative of this time together as this family and this Real Truth family, Father. We're grateful that we're able to connect with people over this internet and these phones, and we can share love and we can share wisdom and knowledge together.